So here we are back to Phoenix, and I'm going to read to us a number of chapters today so we can get through quite a chunk over Easter, because actually I'm a bit worried that maybe we've bitten off more than we can chew with this book, and I want to get it done by as soon as possible so it's fresh and we're still enjoying it very much. So let's get cracking. If you remember last time, we got to number 9. The wolf threatens each one of us. The Astrius of the hearth cannot protect us from it, for it shatters every home. Oh, I'm interested to find out more about the 12 Astraeus. Let's read chapter 11. "Hey, you guys!" called Frolics that evening. His eyes gleamed with blue fire as he surveyed the scene in Bix's cabin. "Heard you were working out. How's it going?" Lucky's body ached all over. He'd mainly been Bix's punch bag, but somehow he didn't mind. She was a fantastic fighter, fierce and proud, yet she never gloated. She just got on with it. "Let's just say she's winning," he admitted. Frolics grinned a huge grin. "Don't feel too bad. Bix is the sharpest kid you ever met. Anything she puts her mind to, she's brilliant. Okay, she can be a pain in the... Anytime you want to do more training, Frolics," said Bix, her needles bristling. Frolics held his hands up. "No way!" he laughed. "But if Lucky survived astral martial arts, maybe it's time he came and had a meal with us." "Not a good idea," said Bixer quickly, to Lucky's relief. Lonely as he was, he didn't want to eat alien food. "Come on," boomed Frolics. "What can go wrong?" And before Lucky or Bixer could protest, he was leading them out of her quarters and back to the Sunfire's main cabin. Beneath its curving arches and vid screens, Mystica stood at the stove, wearing her peacock-coloured robe and a matching headscarf that covered her hair. Laid out before her were 3 large, steaming, covered tureens, their big cooking pots. "Welcome, Lucky," she said. "I'm glad you're joining us. That's enough fighting for one day. Enough fighting for a lifetime. It's time to eat now." He smiled nervously. He was hungry after training, but what was in those tureens? "Oh, how about just a little bit more fighting?" said Bixer, shaping into the style of Sagittarius the Archer. Frolics shadowed her, stretching his arms back into the posture, making his massive muscles rip. "You know what I think of all this violence?" touted Mystica. "Take no notice of them, Lucky. The Axxa have been peaceful for centuries. Our religion tells us that we're all connected. An injury to you is an injury to me." "Yeah, just a shame about the Shadow Gods don't believe that," said Frolics. "Or the Axxa army." Mystica lifted a lid off a tureen and stirred its contents. Clouds of scented steam rose into the air, but still Lucky couldn't see what lay inside it. "That's enough, you two," said the old lady. "Where's the captain?" "I told him supper's ready," said Frolics, "but he said he's staying at the helm to watch for pirates." "I told him there's nothing we can do if they decide to stop us, but he won't listen, so let's just eat without him. Sit yourself down, Lucky, and sample some of our cuisine." This is going to go one of 2 ways. They sat cross-legged on the spherical silver seats around the table. With a flourish, Mystica opened the tureens. Lucky stared at them, and his hunger vanished as he saw what lay before him. The first pot contained some kind of dark green slop. The second contained slimy, wet-looking stuff. He had no idea what it was, but the word intestines came to mind. He hardly dared look at the third pot, because it seemed to be looking back at him. No, it was looking back at him, because it was full of eyeballs. Eyeballs. Lucky blanched. He felt faint. He'd heard about this, of course, but he'd never seen it in real life, and yet here it was, a steaming pot of eyeballs. Frolics was already shoveling food into his dish and licking his lips, but Lucky couldn't move. There were eyeballs staring at him. He gazed back at them in helpless horror. "Mystica," hissed Bixer. "What, my dear?" said the old lady, tucking in. Bixer looked embarrassed. Her needles had gone dark, red, puce, almost like they were blushing. "Can't you give him some of the human stuff? The groundlings think our food's disgusting. It was stupid to ask him to come and eat with us." Her words snapped Lucky out of his daze. He shook his head a little too vigorously. Oh no, it looks great, he made himself say. Thank you. Gingerly, he poured a spoonful of green slop into his dish. It looked the least revolting. There was no way in all the galaxy he was ever eating eyeballs. Saving the best for last, kid, said Frolics, winking his approval. You're very polite, Lucky. She plucked an eyeball from the pot and dropped it into her mouth. But truly, there's no need. Just dive in. Lip-smacking noises followed as she swallowed the eyeball whole and sighed with pleasure. Lucky glanced at Bixer. She was biting her nails. She looked mortified. Her needles were black now and almost completely pulled back, burrowing into her hair like they were trying to disappear. Somehow he didn't like the idea that his presence could make her embarrassed about her own food. He wanted to make the embarrassment go away, but there was only one way to do that. Better hurry, said Frolics, popping an eyeball into his mouth. Bixer shook her head. She looked miserable. You don't have to if you don't want to, she said in a low growl. I know how you groundlings think. Lucky forced himself to reach forward and pick up an eyeball. It was deeply unpleasant to touch, slimy, wet and jellied, just as he feared. But now he'd started, he had to see it through. Who are you calling a groundling? He said defiantly, as he popped the eyeball into his mouth. And it tasted amazing. Sweet, soft, spangly as snow, the flavours swirled around his tongue. The only thing he'd ever had like it was ice cream. But it was even better. He laughed as the eyeball went fizzing down his throat, and he reached at once for another. Course, they're not actual eyeballs, said Frolics, with a grin. We just make 'em look like that so groundlings won't eat 'em all, huh? They're better than good, said Lucky. They're incredible. Mystica smiled proudly. Things don't always taste how they look, eh, Lucky? You really like them, said Bixer, looking shocked. Oh yeah, he said as he gobbled the second eyeball. And seeing that he meant it, Bixer's face lit up with warmth and her needles glowed a happy neon pink. Well, that's okay then, she said, but don't think you can eat them all just because it's your first time. She dived into the bowl, her long fingers scooping up eyeballs faster than he could see. He looked at her and the warmth in her face seemed to spread across his own. Behind her, on the vid screens, the images of the 12 Astraeus were glowing like stained glass. Lucky gazed up at them. They're so beautiful, he thought. And these aliens, these Axxa, well, maybe my mother wasn't so crazy to get a ride with them. So Lucky, said Bixer, we made a deal. I promised you some answers, right? He nodded. I just want to know what's out there, in the war zone. What was the captain warning me about? Bixer glanced at Mystica before replying. There are rumours, she said, but we're not sure what they mean. See, we came to the human world years ago, searching for a peaceful life. She paused. Never did find it. The problem, said Frolics, is it's real hard to get reliable news through the space wall. And it's even harder to get it from our home system, Aquarius, because it's under a human blockade. We have family back there, and this past year we haven't heard a word from them. All we've heard is rumours. He scratched the base of his horns. Weird stories about a wolf that eats the stars. A wolf, said Lucky. A shiver ran through him. How can a wolf eat the stars? We don't know, said Bixer in a low voice. But we do know the stars are scared. Lucky bit down on his lip. He remembered that vision he'd seen in the astrolabe. Those scorching faces staring back at him. You'll talk about the stars as if they're alive. They are alive. He gaped at her. Surely she couldn't mean it. Is it true you worship the stars? He asked. Frolics laughed. Worship the stars. He scoffed, taking another eyeball. What a typical groundling idea. No, of course we don't worship the stars, but we love the stars. Without them, there'd be nothing, right? So we got this greeting. From stars we all came, and to the stars we return, said Lucky, competing the phrase he'd heard his mother and Frolics exchange when they first met. That's it! You learn quick for a groundling. Most humans are completely ignorant about the stars. Hey, protested Lucky, that's not true. We have advanced science. We go from star to star, all over the galaxy. Bixer rolled her eyes. You think you know everything with your science? There's more going on in the galaxy than your moon-brain science can imagine. So many things have been forgotten. So much knowledge has been lost. Mystica coughed. Bixer, enough. The humans have their beliefs too, and we should respect them. Please don't take offense, Lucky. Have another eyeball. A siren cut through the cabin. Captain Knox's voice crackled on the comm. Frolics, he called. I need you in the cockpit now. There's a skyhawk on our tail. Super chapter. I like that we're learning more about the solar system. I like that we're starting to see more. Like, I didn't think they were eating eyeballs. How fantastic they just disguise it so the humans don't take their food. That's brilliant. There's so much more to these aliens than meets the eye. And I actually feel offensive calling them aliens. I'm going to call them the Axxa because I feel like I'm being discriminative. I think that's the universe that SF said has created. But also, I like that we've been wondering about this wolf. And I think we've just found out that maybe he's destroying the solar system. And I wonder if it's going to be up to Lucky to save them all. Right? Chapter 12 coming up soon.